The apartment was silent when Derek Vaughn pushed open the door at 217 a.m., still smelling faintly of Alyssa Crowley's perfume, a sharp, sugary scent that didn't belong here. He smirked, expecting Marissa to be asleep, waiting like always, curled on her side with a hand over her small, pregnant belly. Instead, the lights were dim, the air strangely hollow, and the kitchen counter held only 3 objects: a glass of water, a folded note, and a pair of diamond earrings glimmering under the soft overhead glow. He froze. Those earrings weren't just jewelry. They were the first design Marissa ever crafted, the ones she sold to help him start Vaughn Tech. She cherished them the way other women cherished wedding rings. For a moment, Derek tried to laugh it off. She's being dramatic, he thought. Pregnant women are emotional. She'll be back. But a strange chill crawled up his spine as he picked up the note. Her handwriting, the gentle curves he'd once adored, looked calmer than he expected. Too calm. Derek, I finally understand what love is not. Take care of yourself, Marissa. No anger, no accusations, no begging. Just goodbye. The silence around him felt heavier now, almost judgmental, and for the first time in years, Derek felt something unfamiliar tightening in his chest, not guilt, but fear. A fear he didn't have words for yet. Because deep down, he sensed this wasn't a wife's tantrum. It was the beginning of his downfall. And as he looked around the apartment, noticing the missing suitcase, the neatly folded blanket on the couch, the empty spot where her favorite mug once sat, an unsettling truth pressed against him. Marissa had planned this, quietly, carefully, almost like she knew exactly where he'd been tonight, and she knew exactly what she was about to do next. But Derek didn't know that the next person Marissa would meet was the one man capable of destroying him. Before her world began to crack, Marissa Langford had lived a life built on quiet hope. She grew up in a small town outside Denver, raised by a single mother who worked double shifts at a diner and still came home smiling. Her mother didn't leave her wealth, but she left her wisdom. Love shouldn't shrink you, baby. If it does, it's not love. Back then, Marissa never understood what those words meant. Now, they echoed like prophecy. As a teenager, Marissa found comfort in creating jewelry. She worked with old tools her mother had saved for months to buy. The first time she sold a pair of handcrafted earrings, she cried, not because of the money, but because someone believed in her art. She carried that dream to New York, juggling classes at Parsons and night shifts at a Brooklyn cafe. Life was messy and broke, but she had ambition. Real ambition. The kind that doesn't need spotlight or applause. Then Derek Vaughn walked in. He was charming in that dangerous way, smooth voice, sharp grin, expensive taste he couldn't afford yet. He called her the girl who could make diamonds out of thin air. He made her feel seen, admired, chosen. And when her mother passed unexpectedly, leaving her a modest but meaningful inheritance, Derek was there. He held her through the grief, promised he would take care of her, promised they'd build something extraordinary together. So Marissa believed him. She used part of her inheritance to help Derek launch Vaughn Tech. She put her own dreams on pause, telling herself it was temporary. She cooked, cleaned, managed their apartment, supported his every pitch, his every setback. Even after discovering she was pregnant, something she thought would finally draw them closer, Derek grew colder, more distant. She mistook it for stress. She mistook it for ambition. But gradually, she began to feel herself shrinking exactly what her mother warned her about. Her laughter became quieter, her dreams smaller, her world narrower. Yet she stayed, because she wanted her child to grow up in a whole family, because she still believed Derek had goodness somewhere buried beneath ambition. But the night she found that hotel receipt in his jacket, Alyssa Crowley's name, written in shimmering gold ink, something inside her cracked. For the first time, she wondered if leaving wasn't failure, but survival. And the moment she realized Derek wasn't just unfaithful, but unapologetic, Marissa understood her story wasn't ending, it was beginning. Because someone from her past was about to reappear and ignite a fire she didn't know she still had. While Marissa spent her evenings sketching designs and soothing the small, fluttering life inside her belly, Derek spent his nights in a very different world. A world polished in gold and lies. Alyssa Crowley was the kind of woman who understood exactly how her beauty worked in rooms full of men like Derek, ambitious, insecure, hungry for validation. She wore confidence like perfume and ambition, like jewelry. Her family's wealth meant she never had to work, yet she insisted on calling herself an entrepreneur. In truth, her biggest enterprise was manipulating men with more power than sense. Derek fell for it instantly. He loved how Alyssa admired him, how she made him feel larger than he was, important, irreplaceable. She laughed at every story he told, even the ones Marissa had heard 1,000 times and stopped finding funny years ago. With Alyssa, he wasn't the boy from a broken home who clawed his way into tech startups. He was a man who deserved luxury, applause, attention. And Alyssa fed him those things generously because she wanted something in return. Vaughn Tech was rumored to be preparing for an IPO. If Alyssa played her cards right, becoming Mrs. Vaughn could make her wealth look like pocket change. She pushed him gently, then boldly. "You deserve a woman who elevates your image," she whispered one night in a rooftop bar overlooking Manhattan. "Someone who looks like she belongs beside success." Derek kissed her before answering, but the meaning was clear. Marissa no longer fit the picture. He started small, coming home late, silencing his phone, taking business trips that left him unreachable. He stopped asking how Marissa felt, stopped noticing when she winced from pregnancy cramps or rubbed her tired eyes. He convinced himself stress made him distant, not guilt. Yet guilt crept up in unusual ways. Once, he saw Marissa asleep on the couch, a sketchbook open beside her, a tiny gold charm half finished. And for a moment, he hesitated, remembering how she used to smile when he walked through the door. But then Alyssa texted, "Miss you already." And the moment shattered like glass. Because with Alyssa, he felt admired. With Marissa, he felt exposed. So he drifted deeper into Alyssa's world, the rooftop lounges, the luxury suites, the seductive promise of a woman who wanted him for what he could become, not who he truly was. What Derek didn't realize was that Alyssa had her own secrets. And not even he, in all his arrogance, was prepared for the truth she was hiding. A truth that would destroy far more than a marriage. Marissa didn't pack much the night. She left just a small suitcase, her sketchbook, a pair of comfortable shoes, and the ultrasound picture she kept tucked inside her journal. She moved quietly through the apartment, careful not to disturb the memories still clinging to the walls. The life she had built here felt like a fragile vase someone else had cracked while pretending to admire it. Outside, the Brooklyn air was cold and sharp, brushing against her cheeks as if urging her to stay awake, stay aware. She stood on the sidewalk for a moment, hand resting on her belly, watching her breath drift into the night. For the first time in months, she felt something close to clarity. Leaving wasn't a failure. Leaving was breathing. Marissa walked until she found a taxi. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, glanced back at her suitcase and tear-stained face, but didn't pry. "Where to, miss?" he asked. She hesitated. There was no family to go to, no close friend she trusted enough to involve, no safe place that didn't carry traces of Derek's shadow. So she chose the only place that made sense, the small boutique hotel in Brooklyn where she worked part-time during college. It wasn't fancy, but it had warmth. History. A version of herself she desperately needed to remember. The lobby smelled of cinnamon and old wood, exactly as she remembered. She booked a room under her maiden name. The clerk didn't recognize her, but something in his gentle smile made her feel less alone. Upstairs, the room was simple. A queen bed, a narrow window, a wooden dresser. She sat on the edge of the mattress, tracing the ultrasound picture with her thumb. "I'm sorry," she whispered to her baby, "but I promise we're going to be okay." And for the first time, she almost believed it. As she lay back, exhaustion settling into her bones, an unexpected sense of relief washed over her. The kind that comes after months of pretending everything is fine. But life has a strange way of sending you exactly who you need at the moment you stop searching. Just as she closed her eyes, her phone buzzed with a number she hadn't seen in years. Nathaniel Reeves. A name tied to memories of laughter, mentorship, and a friendship she once treasured. Why was he calling her now? How did he know she needed someone? Marissa hesitated before answering, not realizing that this single moment would reshape everything Derek thought he controlled. Because Nathaniel wasn't calling by coincidence, he was calling because he already knew the truth. Marissa stared at the glowing phone screen, her breath catching when she saw the name Nathaniel Reeves. It had been years since they last spoke, years since he had been the one constant voice of reason in her life. the one person who saw her potential long before she ever believed in it. Back then, he was just a rising finance student with a quiet confidence and a habit of giving advice she didn't know she needed. Now he was a major investor in Manhattan, the kind of man who made headlines and made people listen. She hesitated before answering, her voice barely steady. "Nathaniel?" A pause. Then his tone, warm, familiar, steady, wrapped around her like a blanket. "Marissa, are you safe?" She closed her eyes. He didn't ask where she was, or why she sounded broken. He asked if she was safe. The kind of question only someone who truly cared would think to ask. "How did you?" "I ran into Derek tonight," he said, a tension beneath the calm. He wasn't discreet, and he wasn't alone. Her heart thudded painfully. Of course, Derek wasn't discreet. He never was. She had been invisible in her own marriage for too long, while Alyssa existed in the spotlight of Derek's fantasies. Nathaniel continued gently. "I knew something was wrong when he bragged about finally being free. I didn't believe him, not for a second." Something inside her softened, a part of herself she thought had died. "I'm fine," she lied softly. "Or I will be." Silence stretched between them, weighted but not uncomfortable. He had always been able to hear the things she didn't say. "Where are you staying?" he asked. "In Brooklyn. Just for tonight. I'm coming to you." "No," she said quickly, her hand tightening around the phone. "I don't want to drag anyone into this." "Marissa," he said, voice firm but kind, "you didn't ask for help. I'm offering it. And you don't have to walk through this alone." Her throat tightened. Maybe the hardest lesson was realizing that strength didn't mean isolation. Still, fear whispered through her. Derek was unpredictable. Alyssa was calculating. And Marissa was pregnant, vulnerable, exhausted. "Nathaniel," she whispered, "there are things you don't know." "I know enough," he replied. "And I know you. That's all that matters." She felt her heartbeat shift, less fear, more something she didn't dare name. Not yet. A soft knock sounded at her hotel door. Her breath froze. Nathaniel's voice sharpened instantly. "Marissa? What was that?" Her hand hovered above the doorknob, because whoever was standing on the other side was about to change everything. The next morning, Derek Vaughn woke with a pounding headache and a sense of irritation rather than worry. He had slept alone. Marissa's absence barely registered until sunlight hit the empty side of the bed. Then his eyes darted to the kitchen, to the countertop, where the diamond earrings and the note still sat waiting for him like a verdict. He reread the note 3 times, expecting it to reveal something new. It didn't. Marissa was gone, really gone. But Derek didn't panic out of love. He panicked out of inconvenience. With Von Tech's IPO presentation less than 2 weeks away, a missing, emotional, pregnant wife wasn't just a personal issue, it was a liability. Investors valued stability. A scandal could burn everything he'd built. He grabbed his phone. First call, straight to voicemail. Second call, voicemail again. Third call, a cold automated message telling him the number was unreachable. His annoyance deepened. "Damn it, Marissa," he muttered. "You always pick the worst times." He shoved on a jacket and left the apartment, convincing himself she couldn't have gotten far. She didn't have many friends. She had no family. She barely spent money without asking him first. "She'll come crawling back," he told himself. "She always does." But as he walked down the street, something unsettled him how calm her handwriting had been. Not scared, not angry, just done. And Derek had never seen her done. He pushed the thought away. He started with the places he believed she'd go. The boutique where she worked, the cafe she frequented, even the small park where she liked to sketch. No one had seen her. A few coworkers asked if everything was okay. Derek lied through clenched teeth. "She's just overwhelmed." Pregnancy hormones. You know how women get. He expected sympathy. Instead, he received wary stares. By noon, frustration turned into a simmering fear, not for Marissa's safety, but for his own reputation. Alyssa had already texted him twice, demanding attention, hinting she wanted him to resolve things quickly. He hated being pressured, especially by women. At a stoplight, Derek caught his reflection in a shop window, tired eyes, unshaven jaw, the faintest flicker of guilt he refused to name. He straightened his collar, forcing confidence back into his posture. "I'll find her," he told himself. "I always do." But that confidence shattered when his phone buzzed with a notification from the Von Tech board group chat. Emergency meeting scheduled. Mandatory attendance. His blood ran cold. Because the last time the board called an emergency meeting, it was to remove a founder. And Derek had no idea Marissa wasn't the only one who'd turned her back on him. Marissa sat on the edge of the hotel bed, hands folded protectively over her stomach as the early morning light slipped through the thin curtains. The knock on the door had been nothing more than housekeeping, but the moment had shaken her more than she expected. Fear had a way of clinging to her skin, especially now, especially with the tiny heartbeat she carried inside her. When her phone vibrated again, she thought it was Derek. Instead, it was Nathaniel. "I'm downstairs. I brought breakfast. Just open the door when you're comfortable." No pressure, no demands, just patience, something she hadn't felt from anyone in years. She let him wait 5 long minutes before she finally opened the door. Nathaniel stood there in a navy coat dusted with snow, holding 2 paper cups of coffee and a small bag of pastries from a bakery she used to love. "You remembered," she whispered. His smile was gentle. "I remember everything you cared about." The words cracked something inside her. They sat at the small table by the window. Marissa tried to eat, but her hands trembled. Nathaniel watched her quietly, not pushing, simply giving her space to breathe, something she didn't realize she desperately needed. Finally, he spoke. "Marissa, what happened? Why did you leave?" She tried to explain the betrayal, the distance, the hotel receipt with Alyssa's name, the years of shrinking herself so Derek could shine. But as she talked, her voice began to break. Then Nathaniel noticed the way Marissa held her stomach, the way she winced slightly when she shifted, the way her gaze softened when she touched her belly. "Marissa," he said carefully, "are you?" Her breath hitched. She hadn't intended to tell anyone yet. Not until she felt safe. Not until she could accept it herself. But something about Nathaniel, his steadiness, his sincerity, made her feel more protected than she had in months. "Yes," she whispered, "I'm 5 months." Nathaniel closed his eyes for a moment, as if steadying himself. "Does Derek know?" "No," her voice shook. "And I don't want him to. Not yet. Not like this." A slow, controlled anger flashed in Nathaniel's eyes, not directed at her, but at the man who had failed her so completely. "Marissa, you're not alone," he said quietly. "Not anymore." She looked down, tears blurring her vision. For the first time, she felt a small spark of hope, terrifying, fragile, but real. But hope wasn't the only thing waiting for her. Her phone buzzed sharply. A message. From an unknown number. "We need to talk. It's about Derek." And the sender was the last person Marissa ever expected to hear from. The unknown number kept buzzing on Marissa's phone, each vibration tightening the knot in her stomach. Nathaniel watched her expression shift from confusion to hesitation to something close to dread. "Do you want me to step out?" he offered quietly. She shook her head. "No, I need to see what this is." When she finally opened the message, her breath caught. A series of attachments loaded one by one. Receipts, hotel check-ins, security footage, screenshots, email captures, payments disguised as consulting fees, private dinners charged to Von Tech corporate accounts. At the bottom was a final message. "Derek has been cheating longer than you think, and he's using company funds to do it. I can't stay silent anymore." Signed, Leo Harmon, Von Tech Accounting Department. Marissa stared at the name. She didn't know him personally, but she recognized it from the holiday party guest list Derek had shown her years ago. A quiet man, barely noticeable in a crowd. Someone Derek likely assumed would never speak. Nathaniel leaned closer, scanning the evidence, his jaw tightening with each new document. "This isn't just an affair," he murmured. "This is misuse of corporate funds. If the board gets this, Derek could lose everything." Marissa didn't speak. She couldn't. Betrayal was one thing, but betrayal funded by the company she helped him build? A company she sacrificed her inheritance for? That pain was sharp, totally different from heartbreak. It was humiliation wrapped in financial manipulation. "You need to forward this to someone you trust on the board," Nathaniel said. "Or to a lawyer." She swallowed hard. "I don't want revenge. I just want peace." Nathaniel met her eyes gently. "Peace and accountability aren't enemies, Marissa." She knew he was right. Deep down, she also knew she couldn't let Derek do this. Not to her. not to their unborn child, and not to the employees depending on the company's stability. She took a deep breath and saved all the attachments. Her fingers trembled, but not from fear this time, from clarity. Pain had turned into purpose. Quiet purpose, but powerful. Just then, a second message came in from the same number. This one was a video. Marissa's heart pounded as she pressed play. Alyssa's voice filled the room, laughing, taunting, bragging to a friend about how Derek had promised her shares in the company, how she would replace the pathetic wife soon enough, how she had leverage he didn't even know about. Then came the part that made Marissa's blood run cold. And once the IPO happens, he won't need her at all. Nathaniel's eyes widened. Marissa, this is explosive. Her phone buzzed again, another message. There's more, and you deserve to know everything. And the next file waiting to open would expose a secret darker than infidelity and far more dangerous. While Marissa sat with Nathaniel, absorbing the weight of every new revelation, miles away, Alyssa Crowley was having a very different kind of morning. She lounged on a velvet chaise in her penthouse suite, bathed in golden sunlight, sipping a mimosa as though the world already belonged to her. She had spent months crafting a fantasy future, one where she was celebrated as the glamorous fiancée of a rising tech mogul, and she believed she deserved all of it. The night before, she had pushed Derek harder than ever. You can't keep stalling, she told him, her voice honeyed but sharp. You want the IPO? You want credibility? Then you need the right woman beside you. A power couple sells better than a sob story wife who makes earrings in her spare time. Derek didn't like the pressure, but he liked Alyssa's approval too much to push back. Now, Alyssa replayed that conversation with smug satisfaction. She believed she had Derek wrapped neatly around her finger. But what she didn't know, what Derek himself didn't know, was that her motives went far beyond ambition. Hidden inside her sleek glass desk was a folder labeled Von Tech IPO Strategy Confidential. It wasn't hers. It wasn't even Derek's. It belonged to a rival investor who had quietly funded her for months. She wasn't just Derek's mistress. She was a planted liability. Her job was simple: seduce him, influence him, destabilize his marriage, push him into reckless decisions. And when the company cracked, the rival investor would swoop in and buy Von Tech stock at rock-bottom prices. But Alyssa had miscalculated something that now threatened her entire plan. She underestimated Marissa. She assumed Marissa would fall apart quietly, disappear, let her marriage crumble without resistance. That's what most wives did when faced with betrayal of this scale. But Marissa had left calmly, without tears, without a scene. And a woman who leaves quietly is far more dangerous than a woman who screams. Alyssa's phone buzzed. She smiled, expecting Derek. Instead, it was a message from her silent investor. We have a problem. Someone leaked evidence. Find out who. A chill crept up Alyssa's spine. She dialed Derek immediately. Did you tell anyone about us? She demanded. What? No. Why? Derek sounded irritated, tired. Marissa left. That's all you need to know. Alyssa froze. Left? That wasn't supposed to happen yet. Her lips tightened. Derek, where is she now? I don't know, he snapped, but I'll find her. Alyssa ended the call and stared out her floor-to-ceiling window, unease crawling through her. She thought she was playing Derek. She thought she was manipulating the board. But now, someone else was moving the pieces. And for the first time, Alyssa realized she wasn't the puppeteer. She was the bait. Marissa had barely slept. The weight of everything she had learned pressed on her chest like a stone, but for the first time since leaving Derek, she wasn't drowning in fear. She was floating somewhere between sorrow and awakening, a place where a woman begins to see herself clearly. By mid-morning, Nathaniel had stepped out to make calls, leaving her alone in the quiet hotel room. It was the first true silence she'd felt in years. No Derek pacing, no sharp comments, no subtle sighs of disappointment, just her. She wandered into the small bathroom and flicked on the light. The reflection staring back looked unfamiliar. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair pulled back hastily. A posture shaped by months, maybe years of shrinking herself to fit someone else's expectations. She placed a hand on the mirror, feeling a tremble in her fingertips. I used to know you, she whispered to the reflection. I'm sorry I forgot. Her stomach tightened, not from sadness, but from a small kick, gentle but insistent. Her baby. a reminder of why she had to stand again. A quiet determination settled in her bones. She reached for her makeup bag, dusty from neglect, and laid each item on the sink like tools of reclamation, not for beauty, not for validation, but for identity. As she brushed color onto her cheeks, she noticed something shift in her expression. A softness fading, a steel emerging. She pulled on a clean blouse, ran her fingers through her hair, letting it fall naturally over her shoulders. No perfection, no pretense. Just Marissa, a woman rebuilding herself piece by piece. When she stepped back from the mirror, she didn't see Derek's wife. She didn't see the abandoned woman. She didn't even see the betrayed mother-to-be. She saw a survivor. Nathaniel returned moments later, stopping dead in the doorway. His eyes softened, almost reverent. "You look like yourself." A warmth bloomed in her chest, not romance, not yet, but recognition. Someone saw her. Someone really saw her. "I think I'm ready," she said quietly. "Ready for what?" he asked. "To stop hiding." Nathaniel nodded. "Good, because I have something important to show you. Something you need to see before you decide your next move." Her breath caught. "What is it?" He hesitated, a rare crack in his composed exterior. Proof that Derek's betrayal didn't start with Alyssa. She felt the floor tilt beneath her. "What do you mean?" Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "Marissa, there's a file, a very old one, and it has your name on it. And when she opened that file, her entire marriage would look completely different, shockingly, devastatingly different." Marissa sat across from Nathaniel in a quiet corner of the hotel cafe, the file he had given her still heavy in her hands. She hadn't opened it yet. Her fingers traced the edges nervously, as though the truth inside might burn her. Nathaniel watched her carefully, giving her space but offering stability simply by existing. "Before you read it," he said gently, "you need to understand something." She looked up, her breath unsteady. "This isn't about revenge. This is about protecting yourself and your child from a man who's been exploiting you far longer than you realized." His words were steady, but not unkind. And in them, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, someone rooting for her with no hidden agenda. Still, her voice was small. "What do I do now? I don't know anything about business, or corporate law, or—" Nathaniel leaned in, his tone shifting into something firm, resolute. "That's why I'm going to teach you." Those words struck her deeper than she expected. Not because he offered help, but because he offered belief. He took out his laptop and opened a spreadsheet. "This," he explained, "is Vontech's internal financial structure. These highlighted sections, they're the assets tied directly to your inheritance. Derek funneled them into the company under your name years ago." Marissa stared. Why would he do that? To stabilize his credit, to attract investors, to pretend he had a stronger foundation than he really did. Her stomach twisted. Derek hadn't just betrayed her emotionally, he had used her financially, too. Nathaniel continued, "You own far more of Vontech than you think. And once the board sees this," he paused, letting the implications settle. It was overwhelming, terrifying, empowering. She lifted her eyes to him. "And you're sure I can do this? Step into his world?" Nathaniel's expression softened. "Marissa, you've survived far worse than a boardroom. You just don't realize your strength yet." Something inside her, something dormant for years, flickered awake. She nodded slowly. "Then teach me." What followed was hours of explanations, patient guidance, and quiet breakthroughs. By late afternoon, she could read a financial statement, understand investor influence, and see clearly how Derek had manipulated their shared future. It wasn't easy. Her head ached, her heart ached more. But she wasn't shrinking anymore. When they finally paused, Nathaniel slid the unopened file back toward her. "Now," he said, "you're ready to know the rest." Marissa's hands trembled as she lifted the cover. Inside was a document stamped 7 years ago, months before their wedding. A contract, signed by Derek. And what it said would unravel every memory she thought was real. Derek arrived at Vontech's headquarters looking like a man who'd barely slept because he hadn't. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, and his nerves were frayed from chasing shadows of a wife he assumed would eventually return. But the moment he stepped into the gleaming lobby, he sensed something was wrong. Employees weren't smiling at him. They weren't avoiding him either. They were watching him with curiosity, with suspicion, maybe even with satisfaction. Whispered conversations halted when he passed. A receptionist he barely knew gave him a stiff nod, as though unsure whether acknowledging him was still appropriate. By the time he reached the elevator, dread had begun its slow crawl up his spine. On the top floor, the boardroom doors were already open. Every board member was present, seated in tense silence, a sight rarely seen outside catastrophic emergencies. His CFO, Grant Willis, avoided eye contact. His legal advisor looked pale. His assistant didn't even offer her usual greeting. "What's going on?" Derek demanded, feigning confidence he didn't feel. Grant cleared his throat. "We received concerning documents this morning." Derek's heart skipped. "Documents?" he repeated. "From who?" No one answered. Instead, a projector flickered on, illuminating the wall with the first damning proof. Hotel receipts, timestamped transactions, unauthorized corporate charges. One by one, the evidence Leo Harmon sent to Marissa appeared only now it was displayed in front of the people who controlled Derek's future. "This is taken out of context," Derek snapped, heat rising under his skin. "You all know how rumors spread." His legal advisor interrupted. "These aren't rumors, Derek. They're financial violations. Serious ones." The room tightened. Grant spoke again, voice low. "If this goes public before the IPO, it could destroy us." Destroy us, not destroy you. The distinction was a knife. Derek's pulse hammered. "I can fix this. I just need time." "We don't have time," a board member said sharply. "And we need transparency. Immediately." As the accusations intensified, something dawned on Derek, a question that struck him harder than any evidence on the screen. Who sent this? Who had access to both corporate files and personal information? A sinking realization crept over him, icy and unmistakable. It had to be someone close. Someone quiet, someone who'd had enough. Someone he underestimated. For the first time in years, Derek felt genuinely afraid. Because if the board had this, what else had been uncovered? And who was behind it? His phone buzzed in his pocket. A single text. An unfamiliar number. "You're not the victim here, and this is only the beginning." Derek slowly raised his eyes just as the board prepared to vote on his suspension. 2 days later, Manhattan buzzed with rumors about Vontek's unraveling. Investors whispered, articles hinted, employees speculated. Derek was running on fumes, barely holding his position together as the board questioned every decision he'd ever made. And that was the moment Marissa chose to step back into the world. Nathaniel had insisted on accompanying her to the investor networking event at the plaza, but Marissa purposely arrived alone. She needed to reclaim space, reclaim presence, reclaim herself, not as Derek's wife, not as a victim, but as a woman who finally understood her worth. She walked into the gold-lit ballroom, wearing a simple black dress that framed her gently rounded belly with quiet pride. No hiding, no shrinking. Her hair fell in soft waves, and her makeup was subtle not to impress, but to declare, "I'm still here." Conversations softened as people turned to look. Some recognized her. Some whispered. Some stared with guilt, remembering how they once dismissed her as insignificant beside Derek's rising star. But Marissa didn't flinch. Nathaniel spotted her from across the room. His expression shifted surprise, admiration, and something deeper he tried to mask. He moved toward her, but she held up a hand with a small smile. She wanted to stand on her own first. A group of investors approached her hesitantly. "Mrs. Vaughn? We didn't expect to see you here." "It's just Marissa now," she said warmly. "And yes, I'm here to talk about Vontek and transparency." Her confidence unsettled them. Investors leaned in, curious. Some recognized her name from the early financial documents, the inheritance Derek had used as startup capital. "You were the initial funder?" one of them asked. Marissa nodded. "And a current shareholder." Their eyes widened. They had assumed Derek held all the cards. They were wrong. Nathaniel finally joined her. "Gentlemen," he greeted, "I believe you'll want to hear what Marissa has to say. Her perspective may change how you view the company's future." The investors exchanged glances. The room began to shift. For years, Marissa had been invisible. Now, she was a gravitational force. And then, just as she was preparing to speak, a ripple moved through the ballroom. Heads turned. Murmurs spread. Someone pointed toward the entrance. Derek Vaughn had arrived disheveled, frantic, pale. His eyes searched the room desperately, until they landed on her. Shock, confusion, then fury. He moved toward her with a speed that made several guests step aside. "Marissa," he hissed, "what are you doing here?" She met his rage with calm. "Having a conversation you should have had years ago." His jaw clenched. "You have no idea what you've started." A soft, steady voice came from behind her. "Yes, she does," Nathaniel said. "And so do we." Because the board of Von Tech had just entered the room and they were walking straight toward Marissa. While the ballroom at the plaza buzzed with tension around Marissa and Derek, several blocks away, Alyssa Crowley was living her own unraveling nightmare. She had spent the morning at a photo shoot, flipping her hair and posing for a luxury jewelry campaign she wasn't actually booked for. She had simply convinced the photographer that Derek Vaughn's future fiancé deserved special treatment. But then her phone began vibrating nonstop. At first, she ignored it. Alyssa loved being unreachable. It made her feel important. But when her publicist called 5 times in a row, she finally picked up with a sigh. What now? What she heard next turned her blood to ice. "Alyssa, what did you do?" "Your private voice memo leaked." "What voice memo?" she snapped. "The one where you talk about manipulating Derek. The IPO, calling Marissa." The publicist lowered her voice, horrified. "A placeholder wife." "Alyssa, it's everywhere." Page 6, TMZ, Financial Forums. Alyssa's legs went weak. She grabbed the nearest makeup chair to steady herself. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Those files were private." But even as she said it, she knew exactly who could have leaked them. Her silent investor, the one she was supposed to be helping sabotage Von Tech. The one who warned her only yesterday that someone leaked evidence. He must have realized she was becoming a liability. Her career wasn't just cracking, it was collapsing. She rushed out of the studio, shoving past assistants, ignoring photographers who suddenly shouted her name with a tone that wasn't admiration, but hunger. The wrong kind, the kind that smells scandal. In her car, she refreshed her phone. Hundreds of notifications. Tweets calling her a gold digger. Reddit threads analyzing her manipulation tactics. Bloggers posting screenshots of leaked audio. Influencers distancing themselves with carefully curated statements. Her glamorous world was dissolving in real time. Desperate, she called Derek. He answered on the second ring, breathless and furious. "Alyssa, why are the board members asking about you? What did you do?" "What did I do?" she nearly screamed. "Someone leaked my voice memos. My career is on fire because of you." "Because of me?" Derek barked. "You're blowing up my company." "Your company was already falling apart." Silence. Cold, dangerous silence. Then Derek's voice dropped to a chilling whisper. "Alyssa, don't contact me again." The call ended. Alyssa stared at her reflection in the tinted car window, mascara smudged, hair wild, panic widening her eyes. The influencer persona she curated so carefully was crumbling, exposing the insecure girl beneath the diamonds and filters. She wasn't Derek's future. She wasn't the investor's secret weapon. She wasn't in control of anything anymore. And the next headline waiting to break would strike her down completely because someone had just turned the evidence over to federal investigators. Derek didn't go to his office the next morning. He couldn't. His inbox was flooded with messages from investors demanding explanations, board members requesting documentation, and journalists circling like vultures sensing blood. Alyssa's leaked audio had set the internet ablaze, and every headline tied her directly to him. He paced their apartment like a trapped animal, running his hands through his hair, muttering curses under his breath. The walls felt too close, the silence too loud. It was Marissa's silence, specifically, that haunted him. His wife, the one he believed he could control, had vanished without a trace. And the world was noticing. For the first time, the consequences of losing her began to take shape in his mind. The IPO, the investors, the company's stability, his public image. All of it was slipping. "Damn it, Marissa," he growled, slamming his fist onto the counter. "Where are you?" But anger eventually crumbled into something far uglier: fear. Not fear for her, but fear of accountability. Fear of exposure, fear of losing everything he thought was guaranteed. Finally, in a moment of desperation, he did the one thing his pride had forbidden him from doing earlier. He went to find her. He visited every place he could think of, the boutique, the cafe, the small park in Brooklyn. Nothing. No one had seen her. Even worse, some people looked at him with thinly veiled contempt. "You should have treated her better," one barista muttered under his breath. Derek pretended not to hear. Hours later, exhausted and soaked by a cold drizzle, he found himself standing outside the very hotel Marissa and Nathaniel had been staying in, though he didn't know that yet. He only recognized it because he remembered her mentioning it years ago, back when she still talked to him like he mattered. He walked inside, forcing confidence he didn't feel. "Marissa Vaughn," he told the front desk. "What room is she in?" The clerk looked him over carefully. "I'm sorry, sir. We can't give out that information." "I'm her husband," Derek snapped. The clerk's polite smile didn't budge. "I'm still unable to release that information." Humiliation burned through him. He stepped aside, pulling out his phone, ready to unleash a string of angry texts only to see one new notification. A message from Marissa. His stomach twisted. He opened it. "Stop looking for me. You don't get to control this anymore." The blood drained from his face. She never spoke like that. She never set boundaries. She never told him no. And that terrified him more than any headline, any investor, any scandal. He typed furiously, "Marissa, please. We can fix this. Just tell me where you are." No reply. Only silence. And then, his phone buzzed again. Not from Marissa, but from an unknown sender. A single sentence. "You should worry less about finding her, and more about what she knows." Derek looked up just as someone stepped into the hotel lobby, staring straight at him. Derek's breath caught when he saw who had stepped into the hotel lobby. Leo Harmon, the quiet, forgettable accountant he'd dismissed for years. Derek had barely noticed the man, except to criticize him for being too timid during board meetings. Now Leo stood taller than Derek had ever seen him, shoulders squared, gaze steady as if he finally understood the power of the truth he carried. "Leo?" Derek hissed, scanning the lobby nervously. "What the hell are you doing here?" Leo didn't flinch. "Looking you in the eye." Derek forced a laugh. "You think you can threaten me? I built Vaughn Tech." "No," Leo said calmly. "Marissa built the foundation. You just took credit." Those words hit Derek with surprising force. "Where is she?" he demanded. Leo shook his head. "Not your concern anymore." Derek grabbed his arm. "Where is my wife?" Leo's tone hardened. "You should have asked that before you ruined her life." Security glanced over, sensing tension, forcing Derek to release his grip. Leo straightened his shirt, then reached into his messenger bag. "Here," he said, placing a sealed envelope on the lobby table. "This is what she knows, what everyone will know soon." Derek paled. "What is that?" Leo didn't answer directly. "I found it when I was reconciling old financial archives. You hid it under a shell company, but you forgot one thing." He looked Derek dead in the eye. "Nothing disappears completely." Derek's throat tightened. "Leo, whatever you think you found." "It's not what I think," Leo cut in quietly. "It's what the documents prove." Inside the envelope was the truth. Derek had buried years ago, long before Alyssa, long before the IPO, long before the marriage even began. Leo continued, voice steady. "You didn't marry Marissa for love. You married her because her inheritance stabilized your credit and saved your company. There's a signed agreement. 7 years old. You promised investors access to her assets if Vaughn Tech failed." Derek felt the world tilt. Leo added, "And most importantly, Marissa wasn't supposed to see that file, but now she has." The lobby seemed to close in on him, walls shrinking with every breath. "Where is she now?" Derek whispered, desperation cracking through the arrogance. Leo stepped back. "With people who actually care about her future." Then, with a final glance, he added, "Derek, you should stop chasing her. Because the next person you'll want to run from is the federal investigator who received the same file this morning." Derek staggered. A federal investigator. His heartbeat roared in his ears. And then, as if fate wanted him to crumble completely, his phone buzzed. A message. From Nathaniel. "We need to talk. Marissa deserves the truth you stole from her." And Derek realized the one man he feared most was now standing at Marissa's side. The boardroom at Vaughn Tech had never been this quiet. 12 executives sat around the glossy obsidian table, murmuring in uncertainty as they waited for the emergency session to begin. The tension was palpable, thick enough to cut. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan glittered, unaware that a corporate empire was moments from tilting on its axis. Derek burst through the door, his tie crooked, his confidence fraying. "What's the meaning of this?" he barked. "You can't call a vote without me." Grant, the CFO, avoided his gaze. "We can. And we have." Derek's jaw clenched. "I'm still the CEO. For now," another board member corrected coolly. Then the door opened again. Silence. Shock. A collective intake of breath. Marisa walked in. She looked nothing like the quiet, overshadowed wife the board vaguely remembered from company events. She wore a tailored cream blazer, her hair soft around her shoulders, and the gentle curve of her pregnancy visible beneath her blouse, not hidden, not diminished, but carried with pride. Behind her stood Nathaniel. Derek's face drained of color. "Marissa, what are you doing here?" She stepped forward, calm, controlled, glowing with a strength she didn't have months ago. "I'm here," she said softly, "because I'm a shareholder." A whisper rippled around the room. Nathaniel slid a stack of documents onto the table. Per corporate records, Marissa Langford owns 18% of VonTech. Through her inheritance capital, Derek used to establish the company. Several board members leaned forward, scanning the documents with widening eyes. Derek's voice cracked. "You don't understand. That money wasn't." "It was mine," Marissa interrupted gently, but firmly. "You said it was temporary. You said you'd sign the paperwork later. You never did." Her eyes shimmered, not with pain this time, but with truth finally spoken aloud. "And now," Nathaniel added, "she has the legal right to vote." A heavy silence filled the room. One board member finally spoke. "Mrs. Langford, Marissa, how do you wish to proceed?" Marissa held Derek's gaze. For a moment, something flickered the memory of a woman who once loved him, who once believed in him. But that woman was gone. "I vote," she said steadily, "for Derek Vaughn to be suspended pending federal investigation." Derek staggered back as though struck. "Marissa, you can't," but she had. The board members exchanged looks, relieved, decisive. "The vote stands," Grant announced, "effective immediately." Derek's world collapsed. Security appeared at the door. He spun toward Marissa. "You think you've won? This isn't over." She inhaled slowly, hand resting on her belly. "It is," she whispered, "but not in the way you think. Because the next decision she was about to make would seal Derek's fate forever." Security escorted Derek out of the boardroom, but he jerked free of their hands the second the door closed behind them. Rage poured off him in waves. For years, he had controlled every narrative, every room, every person, especially Marissa. Losing that control felt like suffocating. He stormed down the marble hallway, ignoring the startled looks from employees. His mind raced, clawing for a plan, an escape, a justification, anything. "She betrayed me. She embarrassed me. She ruined everything." But deep inside somewhere, he refused to acknowledge. Another voice whispered, "No. You ruined everything long before she walked away." He shoved the thought aside. His first call was to Alyssa. It went straight to voicemail. Her social media accounts had gone dark. Her sponsorship deals were collapsing hour by hour. A sinking feeling gnawed at him. Alyssa wasn't answering because she wasn't protecting him anymore. She was protecting herself. He moved to the elevator, jabbing the button repeatedly. "Come on, come on." A group of employees stepped in behind him. He caught snippets of their hushed conversation. "Did you see the article? Federal investigation. Marissa Vaughn owns 18%. Honestly, he deserves it." He clenched his jaw so tightly it hurt. They were talking about him, mocking him. When the elevator reached the lobby, Derek pushed through the crowd like a drowning man seeking air. Cameras flashed outside, reporters already gathering, sensing his downfall. "Mr. Vaughn, is it true you misused company funds? Did you have an affair with Alyssa Crowley? How do you respond to accusations from your wife?" He raised his hands to shield his face. No comment. But reporters smelled blood. They surged forward. Security had to intervene. It was chaos. Humiliating, absolute chaos. He made it to the sidewalk, chest heaving. The winter air stabbed at his skin. For the first time, Derek felt small, a speck swallowed by the skyline he once believed he was destined to conquer. He pulled out his phone, hands shaking, and dialed Marissa again. This time, the automated message cut deep. The number you are trying to reach has blocked you. Blocked. His own wife. The woman he thought would always be his safety net. His guarantee. His possession. Something inside him cracked. He stepped backward, leaning against a cold stone pillar as reality closed in. The company was slipping away. Alyssa was gone. Marissa had turned into someone he could no longer predict or control. And worst of all, people were choosing her over him. His phone buzzed again. A message. From an unknown number. Prepare yourself, Derek. What happens next, you brought on yourself. He looked up and saw Nathaniel Reeves standing across the street, watching him with the quiet certainty of a man holding the final card. Marissa didn't plan on seeing Derek again. She had spoken enough truth, survived enough wounds, and rebuilt enough of herself to believe that closure could come without confrontation. But sometimes life insists on giving you the final word you never asked for. She was in the quiet garden behind the plaza, a place she used to visit on her lunch breaks to sketch. The winter air was crisp, the sky pale, and her hands rested gently on her belly as she breathed slowly the way the nurse had taught her. Nathaniel had stepped away for a call. She thought she was alone, until she heard footsteps she could never forget. Marissa. His voice, frayed, desperate. She turned slowly. Derek stood a few feet away, no longer the polished visionary of Von Tech. His hair was unkempt, his coat wrinkled, his eyes wild with fear and pleading. He looked like a man who had lost his script and his audience. "What are you doing here?" she asked softly, not out of fear, but out of genuine curiosity. "I needed to see you," he said, stepping closer. "I needed to explain." "Explain what?" Her voice was calm, too calm. It unsettled him. He swallowed hard. "Everything. I made mistakes, yes, but I was under pressure. The company, the investors. Alyssa, she meant nothing. You know I always come back to you." Marissa blinked, startled by the absurdity. "That's not love, Derek. That's habit." "No," he insisted. "It's loyalty." "Loyalty?" She almost laughed. "You were loyal to your ambition, not to me." Derek rubbed his face with trembling hands. "I lost everything because you left." "No," she corrected gently. "You lost everything because of the choices you made long before I left." His breathing hitched. "I can fix this. We can fix this. Come home." She stepped back, hand instinctively shielding her belly. "There is no home left, Derek. You burned it." His eyes flicked to her stomach, the realization hitting him like a blow. Is the baby?" "Yes," she said. "And no, you won't use this child to rebuild your image." He staggered. "Marissa, please. I'm begging you." She met his gaze, not with hatred, not with bitterness, but with finality. "I forgive you," she said. He froze. "You? What?" "I forgive you," she repeated, voice steady. "But forgiveness isn't the same as reconciliation. It simply means you no longer have power over me." Tears filled Derek's eyes, not the tears of a man who loved, but of a man who lost ownership. Before he could speak again, Nathaniel returned, placing a protective hand on Marissa's back. Derek looked between them, horror spreading across his face. "You and him?" "You can't." Marissa cut him off gently. "I can, and I will." Nathaniel stepped forward. "Leave her, Derek. This is the end." Derek shook his head in disbelief. "You'll regret this, Marissa. You'll see." But he didn't finish. His phone buzzed. A notification from the federal investigator. His face collapsed. And Marissa realized this was the exact moment his world truly ended, not with her leaving, but with justice arriving. The news broke within days. Von Tech founder, under federal investigation. Insider trading and misuse of funds alleged. Alyssa Crowley cooperates with authorities. The world Derek once commanded now swallowed him whole. Investors abandoned him. His assets were frozen. The IPO he worshipped evaporated overnight. And yet, as reporters camped outside courthouses and analysts dissected his downfall, Marissa felt nothing but peace. Not triumph. Not vengeance. Just peace. She watched the headlines from the small porch of the cottage she now rented on the outskirts of Maine, a quiet place surrounded by pine trees and soft morning fog. The air smelled of earth and possibility. Her hand rested on her belly, now round and full. Her baby kicked gently, as if reminding her she wasn't done yet, she was beginning. Nathaniel stepped outside carrying 2 mugs of tea. "They're saying Derek will likely take a plea deal," he said softly. he'll lose the company permanently. Marissa nodded. That's justice, not revenge. Nathaniel smiled, that quiet, steady smile she had leaned on more than once. How do you feel? She exhaled slowly. Free. They sat together in silence, the kind that didn't weigh on her shoulders but lifted them. Marissa looked toward the small studio Nathaniel helped her build behind the cottage sunlight, glinting off silver tools and gemstones resting on the workbench. Her jewelry brand, Langford and Light, was launching in 2 weeks. Investors, not Derek's world, her world now, had already placed orders. Articles praised her resilience and craftsmanship. For the first time, her work carried her name, not his. And she had allowed herself something she once believed she no longer deserved. A second chance at love. Nathaniel reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. He looked at her the way Derek never had, not as something to possess, but as someone to honor, someone to walk beside. When you're ready, he whispered, I'd like to build a life with you, not to replace anything you lost, but to grow something new. Her eyes softened. I think I'm ready now. Months later, Marissa stood in a simple white dress beside Nathaniel on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Their small ceremony held no grandeur, no flashing cameras, just warmth, sincerity, and the quiet certainty of choosing right. When she placed her hand on her newborn daughter's tiny head, she whispered a promise. You'll grow up knowing your worth. Because I finally know mine. Far away, Derek began his community service sentence. Invisible, forgotten, a cautionary tale. Marissa didn't think of him anymore. Her story had closed. Her peace had arrived. And the life she rebuilt was brighter than anything he ever tried to take from her. Well, that's where the story closes, my wonderful friends. If you're still here with me at this moment, it means something in this journey touched your heart in a way only real life can. And now, together, let's take a gentle breath and look at what this story is really reminding us. Life will break you sometimes. It will disappoint you, betray you, shake the ground beneath your feet. But as Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Marissa didn't rise because the world was kind. She rose because she chose different thoughts, different actions, a different future. And that's something each of us can do, even on the days we feel small. Remember, walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Healing isn't loud, it's steady. And real love, real peace, always begins with choosing yourself first. If this story gave you courage, comfort, or even a moment of clarity, let us know. Like the video, share it with someone who may need it, and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey we take together. You're not alone. We're healing, step by step, and I'm right here with you.